Greetings, everyone. I'm Dennis Abaglo, the Aquatic Resources Program Manager for the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. I'm responsible for overseeing Lake Tahoe's Aquatic Invasive Species Program, a program I'm proud to say is viewed as a national model, achieving significant success in both prevention and control, in large part due to a private-public partnership, all having a common interest in protecting Lake Tahoe. We're here today to provide an update and tell a little bit of the story of how the partnership has come together to address one of the biggest threats facing Lake Tahoe's future, and that's the existence and spread of aquatic invasive species, specifically within the Tahoe Keys, which is really a lake-wide problem. We're at a critical stage in the process to finding solutions. With the environmental review of a proposed test project almost complete, agency boards will be faced with making difficult decisions on what is included in just a test of potential treatment methods. We'll look at the progress made in addressing and understanding the Tahoe Keys infestation and what the next steps are in the process, as well as hearing about the project elements from representatives from the Tahoe Keys Property Owners Association. Next. The Tahoe Keys lagoons are by far the largest source of invasive aquatic weeds and their #1 priority for control. The infestation of Eurasian water milfoil and curleaf pondweed at 172 acres is extremely dense, present difficult conditions to treat within, and is 30 times larger than any treatment project we've previously implemented. While the infestation has existed for several years, concerted efforts to reduce populations of aquatic invasive species in other areas of the lake have only really begun in earnest within the last decade. We have successfully addressed smaller, discrete infestations, achieving localized eradication in many of those areas, but scaling that up to the Tahoe Keys is entirely different. That being said, with new tools, both innovative and traditional now available, there's confidence we're on a path to finding solutions. As the infestation has intensified and spread into the lake proper, over 100 acres directly outside the Keys, solving this problem is paramount. Because the Tahoe Keys is ground zero, making progress at a lake-wide scale really hinges on our ability to find solutions in the Tahoe Keys. A lot of progress has been made. In 2017, the Tahoe Keys Property Owners Association proposed a project to address the weeds in the Tahoe Keys lagoons that included the use of aquatic herbicides as the primary means for control, which has never been used before in Lake Tahoe. This triggered the need for the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency and the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board to conduct a comprehensive science-based environmental analysis. The two agencies selected a team of technical consultants to conduct a thorough independent analysis. Due to factors such as size, scale, complexity, controversy, and concern, the stakeholder committee was developed in 2018 that chose a facilitator to guide a collaborative process to provide more transparency and feedback from a broad range of groups that all want to stop the spread of aquatic invasive species. The most significant outcome of the collaborative process was the agreement to conduct a test project, a smaller scale trial that proposes to look at all treatment methods, incorporating innovative and emerging techniques such as ultraviolet light and laminar flow aeration, in addition to the proposed herbicide use, testing them all individually and in combination in order to discover what set of methods will really give us the best chance to find an ultimate solution. And one of the first steps in finding solutions to any problem is collecting information. In the summer of 2019, a massive data collection effort began. Over 100 million, a million and a half data points that helped us understand the dynamics more clearly within the Tahoe Keys. A significant outcome by the team of technical experts was that the weeds themselves are the driving mechanism for continued growth. The annual dieback of weeds is returning nutrients back to the water and sediment year after year, creating a perpetual cycle of nutrient availability. Once that data was in hand, the consultants conducted an independent analysis on the proposed project and the alternatives, and that draft was released in the summer of 2020 with a few big takeaways. Doing nothing is the worst thing for the lake. The infestation will just continue to spread in other areas of the lake. Test early, regardless of the method, when plants are small to minimize the release of excess nutrients and formation of algal blooms. Conduct pre-treatment surveys to ensure the appropriate locations are being treated, and conduct real-time monitoring that allows for adaptations and mitigations if necessary. Once a draft analysis was released, a large public engagement process was started to ensure the public was aware of the severity of the invasive weed problem, what the problem entails, and what the potential impacts and mitigations are. Multiple hearings and webinars were held in addition to field trips that resulted in literally thousands of public comments The Tahoe Science Advisory Council also reviewed the draft analysis and concluded that a thorough analysis of the system and potential impacts were conducted. So what are our next steps? We're finishing up additional UV light trials, ultraviolet light trials from this summer, taking every opportunity to learn more about that emerging technology. Lahontan has also released a draft permit for public review and comment period now based on the draft analysis and a review by the Environmental Protection Agency. We encourage you to provide input, which is available through November 1st. The Tahoe Science Advisory Council also conducted a peer review on elements of a required monitoring plan that is concluded to be comprehensive. Final environmental documents and comments will be released before the end of the year. We're scheduled to have respective board hearings and board decisions in January of 2022. I'll turn it over to Rick Lind from the Tahoe Keys Property Owners Association, which will go into aspects of the proposed project.
Thank you, Dennis. Yeah, my name is Rick Lind. I'm a member of the Tahoe Keys Water Quality Committee, and I'm also the president of CR Ecosystem Associates. Along with Dr. Lars Anderson, we've been supporting the Tahoe Keys with addressing and evaluating options for aquatic invasive plant control since 2013. One of the early and active efforts of the Tahoe Keys was back in 2011 when the Tahoe Keys, in a collaborative effort, worked with the Tahoe Resource Conservation District and TRPA to do an exhaustive worldwide research effort to investigate what the options are for addressing the aquatic invasive plant problem. This included contacting experts from around the world to see what their experience has been elsewhere. In addition, at that time, in the early teens, the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency and TRCD also conducted some preliminary experiments with bottom barrier testing in the Tahoe Keys lagoons, the outcome of which led to the bottom barriers that we use today. In addition to that early research and bottom barrier testing effort, the Tahoe Keys also began gathering water quality data and trend data on aquatic invasive plants to try to get a better handle on the status of the plants and the conditions contributing to the plants. At that time, as you see here, the Tahoe Keys also implemented a number of new management practices in the lagoons, as well as boating cultural practices to try to minimize the spread of aquatic invasive plants within the lagoons and outside of the lagoons into Lake Tahoe. Next. One of the biggest findings of that early data collection was the clear, rapid spread of curly-leaf pondweed. Even though curly-leaf pondweed only appeared in 2003, within that very short time and leading up to today, it is now the dominant aquatic invasive plant in the Tahoe Keys lagoons. Eurasian water milfoil, which is the other aquatic invasive plant, had been around since the 1970s, but as of today, the curly-leaf pondweed has taken over and is now more abundant than the Eurasian water milfoil plant. Next. What's alarming is this map that Dennis showed earlier, which shows that the curly-leaf pondweed has now become established in Lake Tahoe, adjacent to the Tahoe Keys lagoons. And unlike Eurasian water milfoil, which has habitat and prefers habitat in the nearshore areas along the shoreline, the curly-leaf pondweed habitat extends to much greater depths, over 20 feet. And as a result of that, represents a much greater significant threat to Lake Tahoe itself. If not brought under control soon, it will continue to expand into Lake Tahoe and threaten the ecology, the recreation industry, and the economy of the Tahoe Basin. Next. The purpose of the control methods test that's being proposed, and which is the subject of the tentative permit from the Lahontan Board, is to test and scientifically compare the proven effectiveness of herbicides to the experimental technology of UVC light, along with other small-scale options for controlling aquatic invasive plants. This test project is critical to identifying how best we might be able to control the aquatic invasive plant threat to the future of Lake Tahoe. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Lars Anderson now to talk about some of the important aspects of the control methods test. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. This is Lars Anderson. I'm an aquatic plant biologist with a lot of experience and history in developing programs to control invasive aquatic plants. I've been working with the Tahoe Keys for several years to help improve their management process and programs at the Keys. I want to briefly describe the control methods testing, but remind you that the project has several important goals that Rick has mentioned. First of all, we are looking at the feasible methods for possibly controlling the plants in the Keys in a more efficient way than they have been in the past. You may recall that in the past 20 or 30 years, it's been primarily through harvesting, which creates problems with fragments that can move into Lake Tahoe proper. In addition to that, the CMT will inform future strategies to develop improved integrated control programs and projects for the Keys. This is really important because we want to use all the available tools that are available to improve the management methods in the Keys. And of course, we want to look at the impacts of the aquatic weeds in the Keys and their the control of those plants so that the threat to the lake is reduced. And we'll be using throughout the CMT well-established protocols and methods and metrics to measure the impacts and the effects of the treatment. Next. I do want to remind you this is a 3-year project. Only in the first year, which is shown on the left-hand side, is the year in which herbicides will be used in these sites. And we have Group A methods, which include the herbicides as standalone treatments, laminar flow aeration, which is a bubbling device that's put on the bottom of the lagoon, and the UVC treatments that have been mentioned. So all these 3 will be used separately, but we're also including some combination herbicide and UV light treatments. And this is rather important because we do know from experience in the past year or so with the UV light system that it works most efficiently when it doesn't have to negotiate around docks, slopes, and pilings and other structures. So in the combination treatments, we'll be using the UV light system down the center of those sites, and the herbicides will be applied from the dock line toward the shore. And that way we'll have probably the most efficient use of both methodologies in these sites. If you look on the right side, years 2 and 3 will be using non-herbicide approaches as follow-up. And those will include spot treatments and diver-assisted section removal from the sites, hand pulling, bottom barriers, and the continued use of UV light when it's appropriate to keep the plants under check. The whole idea with this is that the herbicide treatments in the first year provide a suppression of the plant population, followed by non-herbicide approaches in the second and third years. In all of these cases and throughout the entire 3 years, we'll be using methods to monitor the effects of the treatments and the effects on water quality. And the next slide, thank you, sort of summarizes the important monitoring components. And I should mention that this has already started from the EIS process, and those final documents will be released, I think, in the next month or so. There's permits, and there's a permit that has been submitted that has been provided by the Lahontan Water Board for review. And by the way, the review comments for the permit that's out there now are due November 1st. So if you have comments, please submit those in writing to the Water Board. In summary of the monitoring components, you can see we'll be looking at the target and non-target plant effects. This is rather important because we want to make sure that we use treatments that don't affect our native plants. And the 2 herbicides that have been selected to use in this proposed study do not affect Elodea canadensis, which is the most important right now native plant out there. So these are well targeted for the plants that are causing the problem. And that's curly-leaf pondweed and Eurasian water milfoil. We'll be looking at general water quality effects of these treatments compared to control or untreated areas. And most importantly, probably from the monitoring side, is looking at the herbicide residues and degradants within the system. There's an extensive and high frequency monitoring program that's being developed to assess what the herbicide levels are within the treatment sites, and also any of those that might exit or leave the treatment sites as well. And I'll show you a map in just a minute that illustrates that. We'll be also doing the standard cyanobacteria monitoring that's been going on for the last 3 years at the Keys. This is to be sure that we understand if there's any impact on harmful algal blooms and toxins that might be related to that. Those will be assessed as well. The BMI is benthic macroinvertebrate samples. This is rather important because it tells us if there's any effect on the organisms that live in the substrate or the bottom of the lagoons. So we're comparing the populations there before the treatments and with the controls and after the applications of these site treatments. The rhodamine WT dye that's listed here is used as a surrogate or a way to assess the potential movement of the herbicides because it's a fluorescent dye that we can actually detect in real time very readily, and it tells us if there's been any movement of the herbicides within the sites. QA, QC are quality assurance and quality control, and this really is the combination of best management practices, not only for the treatment and sampling, but also for processing samples that are used in the laboratory for analysis, and it ensures that we have a high integrity of the data that we get from this project. Thank you. So this map is interesting because it's important because those yellow arrows show you the locations of the double barrier curtains that will be in place before the applications are made and before the sites are started for treatments. And you'll notice that those are strategic in the sense that they keep the applications in those sites away from the central part of the Tahoe Keys Lagoon, and therefore also inhibit any kind of movement out the channel towards the north side and out into the lake. I'd also point out that this map shows some orange sort of diamond-shaped areas. Those are contingency sampling spots that will be looking for any possible residues of the herbicides that might come out of the curtains. And if there's any detected there, there's further sampling that will occur through the West Channel and into the South Shore of Lake Tahoe. So there's a lot of sampling going on with this project to make sure that the herbicides stay where they're supposed to go in our treatment sites. And those curtains will be in place for about 21 days, after which time we'll make sure that the residues are at a level that is acceptable within Keys. Next. This is a timeline that shows the remaining efforts that have to go into this project. And you'll see we're approaching November, where we'll see the final EIS from Lahontan and some PRPA. But the key next step, and I think Rick has mentioned this already, and perhaps Dennis, the Lahontan Water Board and PRPA will be making the decision in January to whether this permit will be issued. If the permit is issued, you'll see the following steps that occurred: a finalization of the CMT implementation plan, various steps along the way until our first proposed application and starting of the CMT site treatment in May. And assuming this all goes on, that's where we'll be. But it's rather important to understand that the permit is critical to the project. Without that permit, this project really can't go forward. And so at this time, I'll turn it back to Kimberly for a summary of the project itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anderson. Hi, everyone. My name is Kimberly Carringer from the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. I want to close this presentation by talking briefly about the collaborative process and public engagement that has occurred as part of the project to date. In Lake Tahoe, we're not strangers to collaboratively working together to help try and solve really complex problems. You heard a lot today about Lake Tahoe's aquatic invasive species program and how partners have been working together for many years across many different jurisdictions to combat aquatic weeds in the lake. And at the beginning planning stages of this project, it was clear that trying to solve the Tahoe Keys problem was going to take collaboration lake-wide. It's the biggest infestation the program has tried to tackle to date, as you heard from the previous presenters, and the threat to Lake Tahoe grows every year. Solving this issue garners major interest from stakeholders in the region and beyond, because this isn't just a Tahoe Keys problem, it's a lake-wide problem. The project here proposed by the Tahoe Keys Property Owners Association is unique because its proposed design and implementation has been shaped by many stakeholders around the basin. Several stakeholder committees and dozens of public meetings and online informational webinars like this one have been convened to continue the collaborative discussion throughout the environmental review of the project and design of the proposed project. And there's more to come over the next several months, as this project goes to the Lahontan Water Board and the TRPA board for project decision. Please go to TahoeKeysWeeds.org to learn more about the project. You can see previous recordings of the meetings there, and the dates for the upcoming meetings will be posted there. And thank you. If you go to, if you want to provide comments specifically on the Lahontan tentative permit that's out right now through November 1st, please go to Lahontan's website and you see the contact information there. So I will close with thanking you for your engagement to date in this process and helping the Tahoe Keys and stakeholders around the basin solve this challenge. Thanks.